Number 1. During my junior year of high school, circa 2011, I was at my best friend's house. Nothing unusual, since we were constantly at each other's houses after school let out. I had been lounging in her room, waiting for her to come back, since she had been gone for about an hour. She re-entered the room with a cordless phone in hand, saying that my dad wanted to speak to me. She appeared uneasy. "My dad?" I asked, baffled. "You're probably thinking that the twist is that my father is dead." But nope. At the time, both of my parents frequently worked all day and were often out at night. It was possible for me not to see them for weeks. What really piqued our concern was that the person on the line called my friend's home phone number. Firstly, my parents never met hers, despite living so close, and there was no way my father could have gleaned her number. Secondly, not even I knew her home phone number. Her mother had picked up, hadn't thought anything of it, and sent her to courier the phone to me. I didn't want to take it, for obvious reasons. She described the caller's voice as being guttural, like an older man's, and she recognized that he didn't sound like my dad. He had repeatedly asked,
"Is Charlie home?"
which creeped us out immensely. Charlie was my nickname at school, one which neither of my parents called me or even knew about. Smartly, she replied no and hung up. We both acknowledged what the outcome would have been had she replied yes instead. This guy must have found out where I lived by watching us walk back and forth between our houses. He had been waiting to catch me alone at home. Even though I had fortunately been at my friend's at the time, my 4'9", 100-pound sister was on her day off from work. The day afterwards, we interrogated all of our mutual friends at school. Maybe one of them was just messing with us. It wouldn't be the first time we prank called each other about something serious. None of them fessed up to the call, and we didn't find any reason to distrust them given the tone of the caller. Having been a foolhardy teenager, I didn't call the police or even inform my parents. I had been a little afraid of telling them anything of the sort, since I had been blamed for being victimized before. Nothing happened to my sister, and we assumed it was an isolated incident and a morbidly funny story to tell our friends. I had also been affectionately nicknamed the Nerd Magnet for my tendency to attract vaguely dangerous people, but that's a story for another time. Eventually, I moved to another neighborhood and never heard from the caller again. This story would have had a complacently boring ending if I hadn't Googled my name some years later. Periodically, I search up my name to see if any of my information appears on those person lookup sites, since I've become wary about being found since then. Instead, I stumbled upon an 8-chapter story on Quotev. The name of the first chapter, my first and last name. I wouldn't have been so jarred if I had a commonplace name, but my last name is unusual for where we live. It was a sanguine teenage romance featuring me as the main character. The text boiled over with names of people I had known throughout middle and high school, including my sisters. The only name I did not recognize was my love interest's, who was written as my childhood friend turned bully. One part mentioned us being intimate, only for the same friend to call me and warn me about a strange car that had been parked in my driveway. Its final update was 3 years ago, eerily around the time I had moved. Prologue. Living in a fairly large city with a bustling nightlife, we receive a constant influx of shady people. I remember many vaguely threatening occurrences which we just shrugged off because that sort of thing tended to happen to me often. About a year and a half before, a guy who might have been an adult man posing as a high school student nearly dragged me into his car. I only escaped because the same friend stabbed him with scissors. We highly suspected that the caller wanted to catch me alone because he had asked beforehand if I was at my friend's house. For our and her family's safety, she replied no to that question as well. Whomever he was, he had wanted to glean my then current whereabouts. Afterwards, my friend continued to receive strange, incoherent calls from a masculine voice, and then there would be times that our calls would be disrupted by this voice. We used to joke that it was a ghost that was possessing her line, but in hindsight, it was most likely the same guy. Creeps me out that he could have been listening in on our conversations. Number 2. Thinking about it now still gives me the creeps to this day. I really want to get this off my chest, and I've only shared this story with a few people I know in real life. Before I tell you what happened, let me give you some context. I am female and 22 years old this year. In my primary school days, I think I was 11 or 12, there was this fascination among my classmates involving social media sites like Friendster, Blogger, Multiply, and then there was Netlog. It was easier to use and customize my profile compared to Blogger, and easier to find and add friends. I think it had a feature where there were groups made based on common interests, and anyone could join the group. I signed up, and during the make your profile process, being the dumbbell that I was, I included my phone number in it, thinking it was a must so I could get out of the tutorial stage. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was when I started accepting friend requests from strangers, usually from the same groups I was in with them. It was fun at first, getting to chat with other people who liked the same bands and stuff as I did, but soon I grew bored with it all. Nobody from my friends list was active anymore, and I eventually deleted my account. Or at least I think I did. Fast forward a few years later, I was 13 and it was already pretty late at night. I was getting ready to sleep when my phone rang. I got a text. I didn't recognize the number, but judging by the message I saw, he sounded pretty friendly. We exchanged a few messages, and after our self-introductions, he asked if he could call me. I got nervous and refused at first, but he insisted on doing so, and I relented to his request. Mistake number 3. His voice came to me as a big surprise. I assumed he was only a few years older than I was. Boy, was I wrong. His voice was pretty deep. I told him he sounded old, and I think I asked him if he was married. He said he had a wife. I also asked him how he got my number, and he mentioned Netlog. He carried on to ask me how old I was, guessing that I was 16, and also asked what my ethnicity was. I answered his questions, and then he asked me this.
So Diane, are you slim?
I kept quiet for a while. What kind of question is this? Who in their right mind would ask such a question, and at this hour? When I found my voice, I asked him why he would want to know that. He said something along the line of,
It's no biggie. I just want to know.
Kind of thing. Not wanting to make him mad or appear rude, I answered his question.
Ooh, big girls are cute too. You sound pretty cute,
he said. I asked him back why he was doing this, that he had a wife and all, to which he replied,
Don't worry, my wife is sleeping.
I didn't know what to do at that point. I felt flattered and embarrassed, but the feeling of dread and being incredibly creeped out overrode that. I can't remember what else I said after hanging up, but I remember texting him back to never call me again. I never heard from him after that. Number 3. So my sister and I shared a big bed when we were younger. I was probably 15 and she was 12. I had a BlackBerry Curve as my first phone, and I just had set my alarm for the morning to wake up. This was about 1 a.m. All of a sudden, I got a call from a super long number. It started with +00811 or something like that, and probably was 15 numbers long. My sister and I stared at the screen and froze because of how weird and eerie it was to receive a call like this at that late hour. I didn't answer it, and we looked it up on my laptop and saw that the number came from Pakistan. We were spooked, but just shrugged it off. As we were settling into bed again, my phone rang again, about 10 minutes after the first call. It was the same number. We were really creeped out now. The creepiest part, though, was that I distinctly remembered that my ringtone was on full blast and started in the middle of the song. To clarify, my ringtone started at the beginning of a song, but this time it began in the middle, as if the first part had been cut off. My sister told me to answer it over and over, so I did. I said hello twice, and after a few seconds of silence, we heard two distinct, loud woman's screams. I quickly hung up and chucked my phone off the bed. My sister and I probably didn't let go of each other until the next morning. Shudder. CreepyMina here of the WorstNightmare channel. I hope you enjoyed those 3 stories of women receiving strange phone calls. Remember that beginning this week, for the rest of October, I will be uploading an additional video, so keep a lookout. It should come up shortly after this one is up, and the subject matter will be the man in the attic and the ghost house. Of course, you know the drill. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, share this video on your favorite social networking platform, follow me on Twitter as WorstNightmare6, leave a comment below. Have you ever received a strange phone call? And, of course, please do stay safe.